following announcement has been paid for by the new Howl Order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we're all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So something interesting came across my timeline this morning, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Now, most of you have probably already seen this, so you heard it when it was said on his show or his podcast, wherever it was. This information was originally disseminated, because a lot of you listen to the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast or his radio spot or radio show rather on the Team 980, whatever the case may be. I don't listen to either one of them. I used to listen to his podcast religiously, but I'm really weird and I like to go in order, and then I fell behind and I fell really behind. And once I fell so far behind that I didn't feel like I could catch up, I just stopped listening. I know it's dumb, but I haven't listened to him in almost a year and a half. But, you know, every now and again, I did just check in to make sure he's not dropping a gem on our melon or two. And here was something that ran across my timeline. And Sheehan is one of those dudes that he has a source in the building or sources that usually don't lead him astray, right? He usually is sniffing somewhere around the truth or somewhere close to it. So when he speaks, I tend to listen. And so he dropped a gem potentially on our melons about the structure. Now, he had some ex-GM on his podcast, I believe. Might have been on the radio. I don't remember. I very, very vaguely remember him saying this on someone's show. I can't remember who he was doing a guest spot on in terms of their show, whether it was Hoffman and I caught a glimpse of that, or it was Standing on his podcast, or it was the Junkies. I caught him somewhere. You're doing a little 10, 15-minute spot, and I think I caught that and I listened to it. And he talked about having a GM on, a former GM, who said that if he were advising Josh Harris, he would tell him to either hire a veteran GM, someone with experience in the league, or he would hire a team president if he wants to hire the young GM who's never done it before in this capacity. Because you're going to need someone to not only teach Josh Harris what the GM game is and what to be looking for, but also you want to have eyes on that young GM, right? Because generally speaking, when you talk about GMs, a lot of times there's a mentor-mentee type of relationship with these GMs, and you see guys, you know, be under someone's wing for 10, 12 years before they finally get an opportunity. It's one thing to be an assistant to the guy. It's another thing to actually be the guy. And when you're a first-time owner and that guy's a first-time GM, things can go sideways if there isn't that veteran buffer there to kind of help both parties as they try to navigate what can sometimes be murky front office waters, right? That kind of scares me a bit, I'm not going to lie, because anytime there's a buffer in between the owner and the guy that is supposed to be making the decisions in terms of the roster and coaching staff and things of that nature, I start thinking about Bruce Allen, I start thinking about Vinny Serrato, I start thinking about guys that have had a negative impact on this organization, and I just don't want to go down that road again. But I got to rewire my brain to understand that this is not that. And it's not even remotely close to that, and I don't need to be thinking like that. But again, I have PTSD, as most of you do as well, and so sometimes those things start to creep into my mind when I start hearing about liaisons of sorts, right? Anyway, if what that general manager said is true, and Josh Harris may be thinking that way, then this article makes a ton of sense. So apparently somebody in the building has has Josh Harris's attention and his trust and his ear, okay? So he's been somewhat of a sounding board for Josh Harris, but he's also been a guy that Harris has been listening to as well. And the guy that has apparently gained the trust of Josh Harris is actually relatively close to Ron Rivera in the organization, and maybe they aren't going to clean house totally. Let's take a look at this article. I'm going to read this entire article to you that came across my timeline this morning. And this was written by the Team 980. Someone wrote this article in conjunction with the Kevin Sheehan show. So let's knock this out real quick. And then, you can kind of give me your thoughts on it down in the comment section as to whether this makes any difference as to how you feel or if you don't like this at all. So Kevin Sheehan got some interesting news over the weekend. There's someone in the Commanders building that Josh Harris has been talking to a lot and has possibly been advising Harris on what the next moves for the organization should be. And it's a name you might not expect as one so close to Ron Rivera. Quote, and this is now Kevin Sheehan speaking. Quote, what I've learned is that Marty Hurney, who was a longtime executive in Carolina with Ron Rivera and now has been with Rivera here for the last 2.5 years, has become a trusted voice in the organization for Josh Harris. Closed quote. Kevin revealed Monday. Quote, Kevin again. And David Tepper, who Josh Harris knows and is the current owner of the Panthers, was apparently high on Hurney as well. Closed quote. Hurney's title is Executive Vice President of Football and Player Personnel, although he's the less visible half of the Marty Party, as GM Martin Mayhew is usually the one that is has the forward-facing role. But as Sheehan has heard, it is Hurney that has become a trusted voice internally. Quote, this is Sheehan again. Remember, Hurney has been in the league a long time and knows the key players. And while I'm not saying he'll be the hire, as Josh Harris is looking for an opinion he trusts, he may be a voice of who to bring in for an interview and what names fill what buckets. Closed quote, Sheehan said. Sheehan again, quote, Marty Hurney was a reporter for the Washington Star, now the Washington Times, who covered the Redskins in the 80s and then was hired by Bobby Beathard to join the PR department, so he's been around. Closed quote. Again, it may mean nothing in terms of Hurney's job security after the year, but for now, he is the one helping Harris navigate the waters as Commanders owner, and maybe more. Quote, and this is Sheehan again, the future structure of this organization could be a coach and GM where the GM is the number one football voice in the organization, or a coach-centric way could be in play again, Sheehan said. But the third possibility would be a president of the organization, followed by a general manager, followed by the head coach. That's my hunch as how this will be structured. Several organizations operate that way. And right now, Jason Wright is the team president, not just of the business operation, but I would expect there would be a true president of football operations who will then hire a GM and a head coach. Closed quote. Could Hurney be the first link in that chain, or on the same level as Wright, or someone else on the business side? So it's something to consider when you start thinking about this offseason, when you start thinking about how the chain of command will go for this organization. Look, these are uncharted territory. This is uncharted territory for us, right? These waters have never been navigated for most of us as fans, all right? Again, I was very young in my fandom in terms of like really, really having a full grasp of what the front office means the last time we actually had a front office member making the decisions with full autonomy, I may add. You got to go all the way back to Charlie Casserly in the late 90s. We're talking 1998. If you're looking for a decision maker that had no ties to the owner and was able to go and do his job without any interference. You got to go all the way back to the 90s for that. So for a lot of you, that predates your fandom. Okay, you've never seen an actual well-structured, healthy, organizational front office structure with this organization. So you don't really know what you want. You just know you want it to be fixed. So my question to you is, do you have an issue with Marty Hurney? potentially being here as, say, the team president. I've always said of the two Martys, or as they called it in the article, I've never heard anybody call them the Marty Party. Have you? Have you called them the Marty Party before? Because I haven't. But we used to just call them, the Martys, right? But I've always had respect for Marty Hurney, and I've told you guys as much on numerous occasions, because the reason I respected Marty Hurney was because of the work he did in Carolina before Ron got there, and then while Ron was there. Literally, how I viewed Ron's tenure in Carolina was essentially like a college coach. I liken it. I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, so this is the easiest analogy that I can make. Charlie Weiss coming to Notre Dame. All this fanfare from New England. They had won the Super Bowls with Brady. He gets the job at Notre Dame. He's supposed to turn around the program. Everybody loved Ty Willingham, but he just didn't get it done. I didn't think he got enough time necessarily, but he could recruit his ass off, could Ty Willingham. And so Notre Dame had all this talent when Charlie Weiss got there. And Charlie Weiss won immediately at Notre Dame with Brady Quinn and, Michael Floyd and all this talent that Ty Willingham had recruited. And everybody was excited about Charlie Weiss. And then when it came time for him to recruit, for him to go out and get his own players, he was incapable of doing that. And we sucked horribly, right? I looked at Ron Rivera's tenure in Carolina and I said, he's winning. Like the best players on Ron Rivera's teams in Carolina, when they won and won big, the best players were all players picked by Marty Hurney. The Luke Kuechly's, the Thomas Davises, he traded for Greg Olson, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. The Cam Newtons of the world, all these guys were selected by Marty Hurney. So when I think about the success that they had in Carolina, Matt Khalil drafted by Marty Hurney, I always just think about these are all Marty Hurney players. Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams, these are all Marty Hurney guys. So I didn't think he was that bad at his job. Everybody always said he's just horrible with the cap. That was his issue. He would always take care of his players and he would overspend sometimes to do so, and he would leave the cap in a perilous state. But they said if you're looking for a talent evaluator, he's the man for the job. Just don't let him anywhere near the money. So I actually don't have an issue with Marty Hurney. The issue with me is Martin Mayhew. But I know a lot of you want the entire cabinet cleaned out. You want no remnants of anybody that was here that has any stench of Dan Snyder, including Marty Hurney. And that may be the case. He may not be here. But if what Sheehan is saying in this article and what he said on his show is accurate, that he has Josh Harris's ear and that there may be a team president of the football side of the operation, and that guy is Marty Hurney, would you be disappointed with that? They're still going to hire a GM, and Hurney will be a part of that process. But is that what you want? Are you indifferent? Do you not care? Does this move the needle for you? Let me know down in the comment section. I don't know if this really changes anything other than having a guy to be an advisor to Josh Harris, but obviously there are layers to this. If you have a team president and that guy presides over the GM, so the GM isn't directly reporting to the owner, he's then reporting to the president. So there's just another step and another layer in that system and those checks and balances. There's just another layer in there between owner and GM. Are you comfortable with that? Let me know down in the comment section. And if you are you comfortable with Marty Hurney potentially filling that role? So I found that interesting as we continue to try to put some of the pieces of the puzzle of this offseason that's coming up that we think is going to be huge together. I think this is another piece that you got to put off to the side. We don't know if it actually belongs in this puzzle or not. And if it does, where does it go? But it may be an important piece. We're just going to put it off to the side for now. Okay? As we go in other news, quite a little bit of action today, right? So Montez Sweat had some things to say about the organization. And we had heard about this yesterday, but we actually got to see it today. We got to put an actual face and voice to it. Tez was at his locker, and he spoke about the difference between Chicago, apparently, and Washington. And I don't know if this was prompted in the question or if they just asked him about the locker room itself and, you know, how they've been able to kind of turn things around here, because since Tez has gotten there, they've played actual good football. They've been a very competent team since he's come over in that trade. I think they've got a winning record since he's come over. If I'm not mistaken, they're 3-2 with him, and they could have easily been 4-1 had the Bears not imploded at the end of that first Lions game in Detroit like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I don't know how the question was phrased, so that part I am not aware of. But somehow he landed on Washington, and he didn't say anything egregious, but it makes me question this culture that Ron has talked so glowingly about. As he starts to pack his things, he keeps repeating the same thing over and over again. I came here to do 2 things: change the culture and find a quarterback, and I've done both of those things. And I'm like, actually, that's not why you were hired. You weren't hired to change the culture and find a quarterback. You were hired to win above all else. And changing the culture and getting a quarterback were going to be 2 of the things that were vital and essential to you doing the chief thing, which was winning, which you never did. Okay, so let's listen to Montez Sweat. Enough of me yapping about what he said. Let's actually listen to what he said.
Where I came from, it was, you know what I'm saying, it was kind of like just waiting on the season and kind of. But here it's like every week, you know, it's a new challenge, and people want to play for the man beside them, man. That's what I'm here for.
So Tez essentially said that guys were essentially playing to get the season over with, to get to the summer, to get to the off season, and just playing a string out, essentially. And they're not doing that in Chicago. Guys are playing for one another. You know, guys are playing with a purpose, and they're going out and they're leaving everything out on the field and trying to win games. And he specifically singled out the head coach in Chicago, Matt Eberflus, and his ability to keep the guys motivated every single week, keep them together, not let them lose focus of the ultimate goal, which is to go out and put your best foot forward and try to win. And, you know, normally when guys say things when they leave, like when Chase Young had something to say when he left, I don't get too bent out of shape about it, because guys are a little salty. You hear the line, it's a business at the end of the day all the time. That's a defense mechanism. You know, that's what you tell yourself. That's what everybody tells you so that you don't make it personal. But we're humans, and that's not how any of this works. People make things personal. That's what people do. Okay, that's what humans do. All right, we try to separate personal from business, but it's hard. Okay, which is why a lot of people say don't hire family members. Hard to separate business from the personal. Some people can do it, others cannot. At the end of the day, his feelings were hurt that he didn't get the contract here in Washington. Who are we kidding? Okay. He watched Duron get one. He watched Jonathan Allen get one. He watched Terry McLaurin get one. And he thought he was going to be the next in line to get one as well. And he didn't. They traded him and he got his money elsewhere. And yes, he's a little bit salty about that. You know, the team that drafted him in the first round back in 2019 didn't offer him a long-term deal. And he thought he earned it in Washington. So yes, he's a little salty, and I expect a salty comment or 2 to come out once you depart. So I generally don't put too much stock into these types of comments, but here's the difference with what he said and why I feel a little bit different about this. And I don't have any ill will towards Montez Sweat. The reason why I'm giving this a little bit more credence is because what Montez Sweat has said, right, aligns with what I've seen from this team essentially since the Seattle Seahawks game, right? And I told you guys, this feels like a team that's just playing out the string. This feels like a team that's just trying to get to the finish line. And they really don't have any urgency getting there. They're just trying to get to the finish line. They're showing up to collect a check, but there's no pride being applied to the performance that we're seeing on the field. That's the first time I saw that in the Rivera era, was that second Giants game. That second Giants game was an ass performance against an ass team, but we were the ones that looked like we didn't give a shit. We were the ones that looked like we didn't give a shit. The Giants were a 2-win team when they showed up in week number 11, and they looked like the hungrier, desperate, more desperate, lively team. We looked like we were going through the motions. And the end result kind of reflected that. And it's been that way pretty much since that Seattle game, which is why you've seen the steady diet of ass whoopings coming our way. So I think there may be some credence to what Montez just said. And what that speaks to me, is a larger point. And that is, has the culture really changed in Washington? Other than when you see the Commanders logo or you hear Washington, is the first thing you think negative in terms of off the field? And I think the answer is no, because Daniel Snyder is no longer here. I don't think that has anything to do with Ronald Rivera. I think where he came into play in all of this is when there was a Daniel Snyder still here, you could push Ron's face out in front and it would give people a different perspective and a different vantage point of our organization. It would give us a face that was safe for people to say, you know what, they're not as bad, and try to separate the rest of the organization from Dan Snyder. Hard to do, but Ronald Rivera's face made it a lot easier for people to do that. Now that he's gone and you strip down the hate that we got just off the strength of the name and the ownership group, and now you just look at the organization as a whole and what Ronald actually has done, and I don't know if the culture has really changed all that much. They're still talking about players that aren't here. They're still taking the low road, right? They're still leaking stuff to the media. Guys aren't playing hard. These are all of the things that we complained about before Ronald got here, when Bruce Allen was here. So, and we're still losing. We're still, Bruce Allen close at 7-9 every year. The Rivera special was 7-9, then 7-10, then 8-1. So we're still mediocre, which is what we were with Jay Gruden at the end of his tenure, which is when Bruce Allen was here and we were close. So, other than the roster being better, which it is, and we could sit here and debate that. Some of you think this roster is, deplorable, and you think it's one of the worst rosters in football. I couldn't disagree with you more. No, it's not a great roster right now, especially after the trading of Montez Sweat and Chase Young. But it's a roster that definitely can compete. And with better coaching, I think this is a team right now vying for a playoff spot. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is, I don't know if the culture has changed all that much. You listen to Chris Cooley and guys like that talk about what players would do back in the day when the season was lost. If they had an injury, I'm going on IR. The guys didn't care. They were showing up to collect a check because they knew the season was done, especially when you didn't respect the coach because you knew he was getting fired. That's what this situation is, and it seems like it's playing out exactly the same way as Montez Sweat kind of alluded to. So for me, I don't think there's really been a culture change. And I know a lot of you have been screaming, what culture change? Because I've been an advocate of saying, hey, Ron's changed the culture, right? We got to give him credit for that. Maybe he hasn't changed anything. I don't know. I can just be talking. I just feel like Tez's words, coupled with the action we've seen since week 11, speaks to a larger problem within the organization, which is guys just not giving a F, it feels like. And you can say what you want. We watched a week that just passed, and we're going to talk about that here in a second, in week 14, where the underdogs rose up and they bit the favorites. A lot of dogs barking, and their bark wasn't just loud. They had a bite that followed up that bark, and it was just as vicious as the bark was, right? And you know what's funny is my guy Derek B. Shout out to my guy Derek B. Hit me up and DM me and said, you know what's ironic is the week where all the underdogs pull the upsets and play hard and get a win, the Commanders aren't a part of it. They're on a bye week. And I said to myself, I didn't respond to it, but I said, well, duh. Had the Commanders been playing, we would have been, you know, the one underdog to not win. So instead of having us out there, we would have been like Carolina, and we would have got our brains bashed in by whoever we played. They left us off to the side and let everybody else take care of their business. Because that's where this organization is right now. I just don't know if these guys are going to fight like the Jets did. You know, hell, I watched the game between the Raiders and the Vikings 0-0. Literally 0-0 until the final 2 minutes of the game, and the Vikings got essentially a walk-off field goal. So, teams are playing hard, man. I watched the Bears beat the Lions. I watched the Patriots beat the Steelers. You know, we watched the Titans come back down 14 with under 4 minutes to go in that ball game on the road against the Dolphins. Watched them rally back and win. We watched the Giants beat the Packers. We watched a lot of teams that we left for dead go out and get a dub. Are we capable of doing that? I keep saying that we are, and we're going to win a game. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. We'll see. I'm still adamant that we're going to win a game. Don't ask me against who. The league is so unpredictable, as you saw in Week 14. We're going to get somebody. I just don't know who at this point. My guess is it's either the Jets or the Cowboys. It could be the Rams right here in Week 15. Highly unlikely after what I watched them do against the Ravens, but again, any given Sunday, right? So, again, you leave your comments down in the comment section about what Tez said. Did it resonate with you? Does it, bring up a larger question for you about the culture? Or are you indifferent? He's gone. He's no longer here. Don't care what he has to say, and you're moving on. Yeah, leave it down in the comment section. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the Tankathon. I told you we would talk about it on Tuesday after the dust had settled and smoke had cleared from Week 14. And I told you last week when we got into the Tankathon that I said, here's the thing. Washington probably won't get any higher than 3, right? I was adamant about that because I didn't see Carolina or New England winning another game. And I said Washington is going to be anywhere from 3 to 7. And the reason why I said 7 is because I said what you have to understand is all these teams are going to win more games. They're not done. We might be done. But I said Vegas is winning more games, right? I'm not worried about Vegas because they're going to win another game or two. I'm not worried about the Jets, even though they were the team I said, if there's one team that I am concerned about with 4 wins like Washington, it'd be the Jets. Because I'm not sure if they're going to win another game. They had to go back to Zach Wilson. They did, and they had their most impressive performance of the season. Coincidentally enough, go figure, right? Against the Texans. However, I don't expect the Jets to win a ton more games, but they do play Washington. Somebody's going to get a win, right? But I didn't expect the Jets to beat the Texans. I wasn't expecting that. But as I mentioned, they were a part of the equation of 3 to 7 because the Jets could have leapfrogged Washington in this Tankathon if Washington was able to get them in their Week 16 matchup. So I was under the assumption that the Jets were a part of how Washington could end up closer to 7 than 3. But I told you the Giants weren't done winning. The Titans weren't done winning. I did not expect the Titans to beat the Dolphins, though. But I was like, they play in a bad division. They're going to play someone that they can beat. I just didn't expect them to go on the road where they haven't won in over a year and beat the Miami Dolphins down 14 with under 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Improbable victory for them. The Chargers may be done winning. So they're one to keep an eye on. Justin Herbert was just put on IR for the remainder of the year with a broken hand. So that is a team worth watching because they could bottom out, finish at 5-12. If we win one more game, we'll end up at 5-12, and then you start looking at that strength of schedule. And so we'll get into that in a second. But Atlanta, I told you, everybody else, all those 5-win teams, Atlanta was a 6-win team, New Orleans was a 5-win team. You don't have to worry about any of it. We're not getting to 6. Okay, so you don't have to worry about them. It was the 4s and the 5s. And then if you were being greedy, you started looking at those 2-win teams and the 3-win team, which was Arizona. And you say, hey, what can we do with those? I kept Carolina and New England out of it because I just didn't see a path to where we could jump either one of those teams. Carolina's too far gone. But New England winning on Thursday night changes a lot. Now they're right there with Arizona. They're only one game ahead of Washington. Now, here's the thing you have to watch with New England and Arizona. Obviously, you got to look at their remaining schedule. I don't care enough to go look at their schedule because I'm just going to let it play out. Whatever happens, happens. I'll say this. Strength of schedule is huge because, again, that's the tiebreaker when it comes to the Tankathon. If you've got a weaker schedule and you still lost games, that means you need to pick more. If you've got a tougher schedule and you lost, then it's validated. Hey, you lost because you played a tougher schedule. Okay, so as of right now, Arizona's schedule is going to be tougher than all of ours because of their division. The Rams have rallied, Seattle's still a good team, and the 49ers are one of the best teams in football. So naturally, their division is so good, they're going to have a tougher strength of schedule. Here's the thing that's going to be dangerous for Washington. Right now, with Dallas and Philadelphia playing each other and them both playing really well, like Philadelphia just lost, but Dallas gained a win in the process of that. So the strength of schedule really didn't change. What's hurtful for Washington in that department is the Giants continuing to win. That bolsters Washington's strength of schedule. And teams like Chicago as well continuing to win also hurts Washington's strength of schedule. So it's making their schedule tougher is what I'm saying. And now that the Rams are starting to win, that's going to make our strength of schedule tougher. The Jets just got to win. That's going to make our strength of schedule tougher. The Dolphins losing pulls it down a little bit, right? But again, these are the factors that you have to start taking into consideration. So it's a lot of moving parts to this discussion. But the fact that we went on a bye week and there were 5 4-win teams, including Washington. We come off the bye and we're the only 4-win team standing. And this is how big of a week it was for the underdog. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the worst 9 teams in the league won in week 14. Record-wise, 5 of the worst 9 teams in the league won. And 2 of them didn't even play in Arizona and Washington. So of the 7 possible worst teams in the league that were on the schedule in week 14, 5 of them were victorious. And they didn't play each other, by the way. It's not like the Jets and Chicago played one another and somebody had to win. They didn't beat up on each other. They went out and beat somebody else that was better than them. So, again, when you're looking at this, it's really interesting because Washington could get as high as 2. Going to need some help. But they're not out of the conversation for the number 2 overall pick. I still think Arizona has a game or 2 that they could win with Kyler Murray under center. And so I told you 3 is very feasible. I don't see Washington getting any higher than 3. But again, I didn't expect New England to beat the Steelers on Thursday. So what do I know? 3 still is the highest that Washington can get, even though 2 is now fully in play with the win over the Steelers by New England and getting them to 3-10 on the season. But 7 to me, after all of these wins, is looking less and less likely. And I'm thinking I can shrink this thing to like from 2 to 5 is where it's looking like right now. I don't know if Washington drops below the 5th pick in the draft. I mean, Chicago, I don't think they're done winning games. Vegas is going to win another game. The Jets play us, so we'll have a say-so in that matter. The Giants, they're going to win another game. You know, I think they're going to win at least one more. The Titans are going to win another game. The Chargers are the team to watch. The Chargers, the Jets, and Washington are the 3 teams that I would say keep an eye on in terms of them not winning another game this season or potentially winning one more game in the case of Washington. And all of them being tied at 5-12 when the season is done, because Chicago, Vegas, the Giants, and Tennessee are all going to win another game. So they're not going to be 5-win teams. They're going to move into that 6 category, leaving potentially Washington, the Jets, and the Chargers behind at 5 wins. Again, Washington has to get there. They're all by their lonesome at 4-9. They're the only 4-win team in the league right now. So right now they're closer to 2 than they are 7, which is remarkable. Keep in mind, we were once a 4-5 team. We've lost 4 straight, as the streak indicates. We're one of the worst teams playing, right now in terms of how many games we've lost in a row. Nobody's lost more games than us other than Carolina. So we're pretty bad off right now. And if the trend continues, we'll be in a position. I'm going to be honest with you. The higher they get, the less likely Sam is the starting quarterback of the future. He may start the season next year, but the higher they get, the less likely it is they build around Sam. Personally, if you got all the way to number 2, all options should be on the board, including trading the pick. Trading the pick. And what you should be doing to really push the value of that pick is, hey, if y'all don't come and get this quarterback, I'm going to take him myself. And I'm not afraid to do it. Don't make me push the button, because I'll push it. If you really desperately want this quarterback, come and get him. Because if you don't, I will. And if you can get somebody to come up 5 or 6 spots, 4 or 5 spots, 3 or 2 spots, and you don't move back that far and you still got a shot to get one of the best XYZs in the draft, tackles, tight ends, receivers, etc., and you pick up copious amounts of draft capital in the process that you hope turns into the gift that keeps on giving, sort of like what Chicago is enduring right now. Like literally, that pick they got from Carolina last year is the pick that and the gift that keeps on giving. They could flip that pick if they decide to roll with Justin Fields. They could literally use that pick, flip it again, and turn it into another first-round pick next year, an additional first-rounder next year, an additional second or third-rounder next year, in addition to a second or third-rounder or both this year. So that's what you're looking for. If you can flip something like that and turn it into a pick that continues to be the gift that keeps on giving, excellent. That's what the Eagles did for years. They were eating off of some of those moves that they made. And then they flip another pick, move back, and pick up an additional first-rounder for the next year's draft. All you got to do is do it once. And then that'll set off a chain of events that allows you to potentially keep doing it over and over again. That's what the Bears are. They did it once, and now they're in a position to do it again if they so choose. So we'll see. But that should also be an option if you end up with the second or the third pick, as well as selecting a quarterback or selecting Marvin Harrison Jr. or selecting a tackle. All of those options should be available to you, and you should be exploring every single one of them. And then you make the decision what's best for the organization moving forward. Interesting times, man. Interesting times here in Washington, to say the least. The week couldn't have gone any better for Washington. Everybody around them won, except for the 2 teams that were on bye weeks, Arizona and Washington, who sit at 3-4. Carolina isn't winning anymore, so we don't even count them anymore. New England won, Chicago won, the Jets won, the Giants won, the Titans won. The Saints won. It's over. In terms of us falling out of the top 7, it ain't happening. There was a chance. It was a slight one, but there was a chance that we could have fallen out of the top 7. It ain't happening now. Now the question is, to me, 2 to 5. I don't think we fall any lower than the 5th pick. Now, again, keep your eye on the Chargers. We beat the Jets. I don't think the Chargers are winning another game. Keep your eye on them. That could get you to 6. The Jets leapfrogging us along with the Chargers. That could get you to 6. Those 2 teams. But my money's on 2 to 5. Somewhere in that neighborhood is where Washington will lie. We'll see what week 15 brings. We'll revisit this next Tuesday. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, on this installment of Commanders Nightly News. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys live tomorrow night. I'm going to try to get a podcast out later on tonight. We'll see if it happens. And I'm going to try to get in my LTN exclusives. Again, not sure if that's going to happen. But I'm going to try my damnedest to get all of that knocked out later on this evening. Anyway, that's enough. You guys get out of here. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone.